Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? May I ask that everyone turn off their phone, please? As per COVID restrictions, we maintain our 2 meters distance around. All spectators, thank you for coming out, but please do not penetrate our 10-person bubble. Thank you. Honored guests, serving members and veterans, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Colonel Retired Gregory Burt, and as a member of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment Advisory Council, I am deeply honored to be your Master of Ceremonies for this historic commemorative event, recognizing the 104th anniversary of the battles of Beaumont, Hamel, and the Somme. It was a magnificent display of trained and disciplined valor, and its assault only failed of success because dead men can advance no further. Lieutenant General Sir Almer Hunter Weston, KCB DSO, Commander, British 8th Corps. On behalf of our fellow Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and friends, today we have gathered together on Memorial Day, also the beginning of Canada Day, to pay respect to the soldiers of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, their families, who made such an enormous and heroic sacrifice in the name of peace and freedom on July 1st, 1916 in Beaumont, Hamel, France. On that tragic day, at 9:15 in the morning, the Royal Newfoundland Regiment was given the orders to go over the top and attack the German position at Beaumont, Hamel. Nearly 800 members of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment went into battle, and in less than half an hour later, it was all over. On the next day, only 68 Newfoundlanders answered the roll call. 324 men had been killed, or were missing, or presumed dead. 386 were wounded. The dead included 14 sets of brothers, including 4 lieutenants from the Air family of St. John's. When the then Minister of Veterans Affairs spoke during the 90th anniversary in France, he offered this solemn and stark reflection, and I quote, "It lasted only 30 minutes, and it will be 2 weeks before the news of the disaster to reach Newfoundland. You can only imagine the darkness that fell over the island that day. Few families and even fewer communities were untouched by the tragedy. Fathers, sons, brothers, friends, neighbors, a generation of future leaders lost in 30 minutes." End quote. Yes, a generation lost, but a generation never forgotten. Hence why we are here this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, that deep respect and notice and that dedication to remember is also recast and rededicated here today by your presence and your prayers. This morning in the National Capital Region, we are gathered here to pay respect to the gallantry, the courage, the valor, and the distinguished service and devotion to duty that Newfoundlanders and Canadians exemplified on the battlefields of France in the First World War. A total of 8,707 men enlisted in the Dominion 3 services: the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, the Royal Naval Reserve, and the Newfoundland Forestry Corps. Another 3,296 joined the Canadian Expeditionary Force. These 11,980 men represent nearly 10% of the Dominion's total male population, or 35.6% of all men of military age between 19 and 35 years old. At sea, almost 2,000 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians saw service in the Newfoundland Royal Naval Reserve during the First World War. Unlike the men of the Royal 1st Newfoundland Regiment, who remained with the unit, reservists were dispersed throughout the Royal Navy. At least 21 Newfoundlanders are known to have joined the Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Air Force. At least 505 sailors from Newfoundland and Labrador were part of the Merchant Marine and worked on the commercial vessels, shipping passengers, and cargo allied ports. There was also about 175 women who served overseas as graduate nurses or with the Voluntary Aid Detachment, a corps of semi-trained nurses. We should never forget the sacrifice of all our veterans, nor the sacrifice of all soldiers, sailors, aviators who continue to fight for peace and freedom around the world today. God save the Queen. Now we're ready for the last post.
Bye.
Sincere thank you to our bugler, Corporal Travis Mandel, and Piper Tim Lee Mandel. The Act of Remembrance will be read by Mr. Bill Black, veteran of the Korean War.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. And going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Thank you, Bill. The commitment to remember will be recited by Austin Stein of Stittsville, Ontario. He is the great-grandson of Sergeant Joshua Robert Goodyear, Royal Newfoundland Regiment number 573. It's important the Goodyear family of grandfather Newfoundland sent 5 brothers overseas in the First World War. Tragically, 3 of the brothers, Hedley, Raymond, and Stanley, were killed in the battle. 2 brothers, Ken and Joe, returned home. Sergeant Goodyear was one of the 68 to answer the roll call the next day.
Commitment to remember. They were young, as we are young. They served, giving freely of themselves. To them we pledge, amid the winds of time, to carry their torch and never forget. We will remember them. We will remember them.
Thank you, Austin. I would now like to invite Brigadier General retired Venerable Gerald E. Peddle, OMMCD, grandson of Private Stanley Budgell, Royal Newfoundland Regiment number 1856, to come forward and offer prayers.
Let us pray. O great God, you who are the creator of all and the sustainer of all, have mercy on this day. We who are gathered once again to remember those horrors which always ensue when man lifts up his sword against his fellow man. We remember today Beaumont, Hamel, and our forebears in the Royal Newfoundland Regiment. We recall that it was on this very day 104 years ago when these loyal Newfoundlanders stormed out of their trenches and sunk their shoulders into the oncoming blizzard of machine gun rounds. In an hour, they would teach us and the world that only tragedy and horror can result when man goes to war. We recall, O God, too, the almost fatal blow that the colony was dealt in those few plaintive hours, as these young men, who were our strongest and best, whose potential contribution to the colony and the world would never be known, for they bled and died instead that day on the Beaumont Hamel battlefield. O God, we ask you then to remind us not to forget and to pledge ourselves to never allow their sacrifices to be in vain. Once again, we must promise to strive for peace in our families, in our communities, and the world. Let us vow, under the strength of Almighty God, to never allow violence to replace conversation and diplomacy. These Newfoundland soldiers were stopped dead in their pursuits of peace. But in their final dying act, they now stare down through the generations and directly into the eyes of everybody gathered here today. And they, beseech us to carry on, to finish the pursuit which they began. So then, O God, we hear them. Strengthen then our reserve to maintain our effort against the foes of intolerance, ignorance, jealousy, and hatred, like you did for those 801 Newfoundlanders. Use us then as instruments of your peace. Help us to remain faithful to you and to one another, always content in the knowledge that we must be kept loyal, steadfast, and true, just like those who showed us the way on the fields of Beaumont, Hamel, 104 years ago today. These things in your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Padre. We will now proceed with the wreath laying ceremony. We have two ceremonial wreath bearers this morning, Captain Retired Robert Stein and Lieutenant Colonel Retired Peter McCage. On behalf of the Government of Canada, Lieutenant Colonel Retired Karen McCrimmon, Member of Parliament, Canada Carleton. On behalf of Veterans Affairs Canada, General Retired Walt Natinchuk, Deputy Minister, Veterans Affairs Canada. On behalf of the Canadian Armed Forces, Major General Rich Goodyear. On behalf of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, Brigadier General Retired Bruce Plowman. He is the grandson of Private John Plowman, Royal Newfoundland Regiment number 890, who fought in Gallipoli. On behalf of the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, Mr. Herb Davis, member of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment Advisory Council. On behalf of the youth of Canada and Newfoundland and Labrador, Austin Stein. On behalf of the Korean Veterans Association, Mr. Bill Black. On behalf of the Memorial University of Newfoundland and Labrador, Miss Pamela Flynn from St. John's. This concludes the wreath-laying ceremony. On that morning, the regiment attacked from a support trench nicknamed St. John's Road. They advanced from this trench, which was actually behind the front line, because of the sheer number of soldiers involved in earlier attacks who were dead or wounded were clogging up the front trenches. This meant that the regiment had to traverse more than 200 meters before they even made it to the Allies' front line. Once they made it into no man's land, they were then expected to cross through tangles of barbed wire to reach the enemy trenches more than 500 meters away. As the Newfoundlanders advanced towards the enemy, there was an opening in the wire by a tree partway down the slope that marked the spot where German fire seemed to become particularly intense. This gnarled tree was nicknamed the Danger Tree by the Newfoundland troops and marked the spot where many of them would fall that morning. As they walked, as they were ordered to, into the hail of machine gun and artillery fire, it was said that many of them tucked their chins in, almost like they were walking into the teeth of a blizzard back home. But this time, it was not snow flying. I now invite Mr. Herb Davis, whose great uncle, Private Lester Barber, Royal Newfoundland Regiment number 3709, was killed in Beaumont, Hamel, to read Loyola Hearn's poem, Only One Tree, written by Loyola when he was at the Beaumont Hamel ceremony, the 90th anniversary, 1 July 2006.
Thank you, Greg. Only one tree. The stars shone so bright that last June night. In our trenches, we crowded like cattle. But sleep wouldn't come as I lay with my gun. For tomorrow we'll face our first battle. As the morning sun danced for the green fields of France, the captain said, "Boys, no more sermons. The talking must stop. Now it's over the top. We must take this land from the Germans." Only one tree, that's all we could see. Only one tree from danger. Only one tree, that's all we could see as we faced down the guns of the stranger. The craters they grew as the mortar shells flew, the ground like the back of a camel. With orders in hand, we crossed no man's land near the towns that they call Beaumont Hamel. We came under fire as we cut the barbed wire. My comrades are falling by dozens. These corpses I see are not strangers to me, but uncles and brothers and cousins. Only one tree, that's all we can see. Only one shelter for danger. Only one tree. That's all we can see as we face down the dump of the stream. There's pain in my back. The sky turned black. For the ambulance bells that kept ringing. My hand was all red, but I just touched my head, and somewhere the choir was softly singing. As I lay in the mud, the memories flood of that old painful tree silhouette. In its shade I'll not rest, though I gave it my best. For Newfoundland, lest you forget it. Only one tree, that's all we can see. Only one shot for me. Only one tree, that's all we can see. As we face down the dump of the train. Thank you.
Thank you, Herb. Please join us in singing of the Ode to Newfoundland. Boy, do we miss our choir, eh? Before we sing O Canada, I wish to offer my sincere thanks and gratitude for many people that helped us this morning. Special thanks to Karen McCrimmon and Walter Tincher for coming up this morning, Mr. Robert Loken and his team from Veterans Affairs, CFUCO Commander Colonel Bent Plainville, but more important, Master Warrant Officer Cecil Paris, who couldn't be here this morning, Sergeant Mark Prudham, this is his 4th time he's doing this, Bueller Corporal Travis, and Piper Corporal Tim Reed. Please join in and sing O Canada. This concludes today's 104th commemoration of the Battle of Beaumont, Hamel, and Somme. Today, as we celebrate Canada's 153rd birthday and the freedom we cherish, let us always remember those who fought so valiantly to give us this precious freedom we enjoy and value so dearly today and every day. Right after, we have a couple of pictures, if we can keep everybody around, for our memoirs. Happy Canada Day. See you all in 365 days for the 105th.